Captain Jake Morrison stood at the window of the New Horizon, watching Earth grow smaller behind them. 3 years had passed since first contact with the aliens. 3 years since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe. Now Jake found himself traveling to meet with the Galactic Sports Federation, though he still wasn't sure why they wanted to talk to humans. The message had arrived 2 weeks ago through the usual diplomatic channels. Ambassador Lisa Carter had called it an honor. The aliens wanted humanity to join their tournament, a sporting competition held every 10 years across the galaxy. Jake thought it sounded like the Olympics, but bigger, much bigger. Captain Morrison, the ambassador wants to see you in the briefing room, Lieutenant Danny Kim said, appearing at Jake's shoulder. Danny was young, maybe 25, with quick eyes that missed nothing. He had been a Green Beret before joining the diplomatic mission. Jake nodded and followed Danny through the ship's corridors. The New Horizon was Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, built specifically for meeting with alien races. It carried the best technology humanity could produce, though Jake suspected it would look primitive compared to what the aliens had. The briefing room was filled with people when Jake arrived. Ambassador Carter sat at the head of the table, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been a senator before taking the ambassador job. Beside her sat Dr. Amy Rodriguez, the team's xenobiologist. Amy had studied every piece of alien biology Earth had access to, which wasn't much. "Jake, good timing," Lisa said as he entered. "We were just discussing the invitation details." Jake took a seat and looked around the table. He recognized most of the faces. Colonel Ryan Blake sat across from him, his arms crossed over his chest. Ryan had been a Navy SEAL for 15 years before retiring. Now he worked as a military consultant for the Diplomatic Corps. Next to Ryan sat Sergeant Maya Johnson, a small woman with sharp features and steady hands. Maya had served 3 tours as an Army Ranger. "So what exactly are we talking about here?" Jake asked. Lisa activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Alien text appeared, along with what looked like sporting events. The Galactic Sports Federation holds a tournament every decade. It brings together athletes from across the galaxy to compete in various events. They call it the Convergence Games. "Sounds harmless enough," said Lieutenant Alex Turner from the end of the table. Alex was a Marine, built like a tank with scars on his knuckles that told stories he rarely shared. "That's what I thought too," Lisa replied. "But look at this." She changed the display to show footage from previous tournaments. Jake watched alien creatures fighting in elaborate arenas, using weapons and tactics that looked surprisingly familiar. "This isn't football," Ryan said quietly. "No, it's not," Amy added. "From what I can tell, their sporting events are based on combat scenarios, military tactics, warfare simulations." Jake studied the footage more carefully. He saw formations that reminded him of infantry movements, flanking maneuvers, coordinated attacks. "They want us to compete in war games?" "They want us to compete in what they consider recreational activities," Lisa corrected. "The problem is what they do for fun looks a lot like what we do for survival." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Jake had seen real combat in 3 different conflicts. So had most of the people in this room. What the aliens called sport, humans called Tuesday. "There's something else," Amy said, pulling up new data. "I've been studying the participating species. Most of them are what we would consider peaceful civilizations. They've had advanced technology for thousands of years. Some haven't fought a real war in centuries. So they play war games instead," Maya said. "Exactly. But Jake, look at their techniques." Amy showed more footage. "They're theatrical, flashy. They fight like they're performing for an audience." "Because they are," Ryan said. "It's entertainment for them." Jake understood now why Lisa had called this meeting. The aliens expected humanity to send athletes to compete in their games, but the games were based on military combat, and humanity had been fighting real wars for their entire history. "Who else is going?" Jake asked. Lisa smiled. "That's where it gets interesting. The Federation specifically requested that we send participants with military backgrounds. They said they were curious about our warrior culture. Warrior culture? Alex laughed. They make it sound like we're barbarians. To them, we probably are, Amy said. Most galactic civilizations moved past warfare centuries ago. They see our military history as primitive, quaint. Jake looked around the table again. Every person here had combat experience. Every person here had trained to kill other people efficiently and quickly. The aliens thought this made them primitive. So what's the plan? Jake asked. We send a team, Lisa said. Small group, maybe 6 people. Let them compete in their games and see what happens. What could go wrong? Danny muttered. Lisa ignored him. The Federation has provided transportation to the tournament site. It's being held on a massive space station called Olympus 7. The event lasts 2 weeks. 5 main categories of competition. She brought up a new display showing the event. Categories: combat simulation, tactical warfare, survival challenges, strategic elimination, grand melee. Those aren't sports, Ryan said flatly. They are to the aliens, Lisa replied. Jake, I want you to lead the team. Pick your people. The Federation is expecting us to provide entertainment. Show them how primitive humans handle their sophisticated games. Jake studied the list again. Combat simulation would be like advanced training exercises. Tactical warfare was just wargaming. Survival challenges were basic military training. Strategic elimination sounded like special operations missions. The grand melee was probably just a big fight. When do we leave? He asked. Next week. The Federation is sending a ship to collect our team. Jake nodded and looked around the table one more time. Ryan, you're second in command. Maya, Alex, Danny, you're all on the team. Amy, I want you there for technical support. What about the 6th spot? Lisa asked. Corporal Katie Brooks, Jake said without hesitation. Air Force Tactical Coordinator. Smart as hell and doesn't crack under pressure. Good choice, Ryan agreed. Lisa stood up, ending the meeting. Gentlemen, ladies, you have 1 week to prepare. The aliens think they're getting some amateur athletes who play soldier in their spare time. Try not to disappoint them too much. As everyone filed out of the briefing room, Jake remained in his seat, staring at the alien footage. The creatures, on screen, moved with practiced precision, but there was something missing. Something Jake recognized from his own combat experience. They fought like they expected to survive. Like the goal was to win points, not to stay alive. Jake had a feeling. The aliens were about to learn the difference between playing war and fighting one. The alien transport ship was unlike anything Jake Morrison had ever seen. It moved through space without any visible engines, silent as a ghost. The interior looked more like a luxury hotel than a military vessel. Smooth walls curved in impossible ways, and soft light seemed to come from everywhere at once. Jake sat with his team in what the aliens called a rest chamber. Through the transparent walls, he could see stars streaming past at speeds that should have been impossible. The journey to Olympus 7 would take 3 days. Corporal Katie Brooks was studying a datapad, her blonde hair tied back in regulation style. She had joined the team just hours before departure, but she fit in perfectly. Katie had coordinated airstrikes in 2 different wars. She understood how battles worked. Captain, you need to see this, Katie said, holding up the pad. I've been going through the tournament data the aliens gave us. Jake moved to sit beside her. Ryan, Blake, and the others gathered around to look at the screen. The data showed previous tournament results going back almost 1,000 years. Look at the participation numbers. Katie pointed to a chart. 847 different species compete. That's almost every known civilization in the galaxy. Big event, Alex Turner said. Bigger than we thought, Katie replied. But here's the interesting part. Look at the winning patterns. Jake studied the data. The same few species won most events every tournament. The Xanthari dominated combat events. The Vorthak controlled energy-based competitions. The Ketmar won team coordination challenges. They've been doing this for centuries, Maya Johnson said. Same winners, same losers. It's like they know their roles. Because they do, Amy Rodriguez said from across the room. She had been quiet during most of the trip, studying alien biology files. I've been reading about the competing species. Most of them haven't fought real wars in thousands of years. What do you mean? Jake asked. Amy pulled up her own data. Images of different alien species appeared on the wall display. The Xanthari, for example. They're considered the galaxy's best warriors, but they haven't fought an actual war in over 2,000 years. Their entire military exists for these tournaments and ceremonial purposes. She changed the image to show insect-like creatures. The Ketmar have a hive mind, perfect coordination, but they've never used it for actual combat, just competitions and construction projects. So they're playing dress-up, Ryan said. Pretending to be soldiers. Not pretending, Amy corrected. They are soldiers. Highly trained, incredibly skilled soldiers. But they've never had to kill anyone. The distinction was important, Jake realized. These aliens had perfected the art of warfare without ever experiencing war. They knew tactics and techniques, but they had never felt the fear of dying in battle. The transport ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the walls, Jake could see their destination approaching. Olympus 7 was massive beyond imagination. The space station stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Towers and rings and spheres connected by bridges and tubes. Millions of lights sparkled across its surface. Holy hell, Danny Kim whispered. An alien voice came through, the ship's communication system. It spoke in perfect English, though the words had a strange musical quality. Human delegation, we are approaching Olympus 7. Please prepare for docking procedures. Jake looked out at the station again. Ships of every size and shape moved around it like insects around a hive. Some were sleek and graceful. Others looked like floating cities. A few appeared to be living creatures rather than machines. How many people live there? Katie asked. It's not permanent, Amy replied, reading from her datapad. The station is built specifically for the tournament. Most of it gets constructed fresh every 10 years. Current population is approximately 50 million beings. 50 million, Alex repeated. All here to watch us fight. All here to watch us compete, Jake corrected, though he understood Alex's point. This wasn't going to be a private event. The docking process took almost an hour. The human transport was tiny compared to most of the other ships. Jake watched through the walls as they moved through a maze of docking bays and traffic lanes. Everything was organized with military precision, but it felt more like a festival than a war zone. When they finally docked, alien beings were waiting to greet them. Jake recognized the species from his briefing materials. Two tall, thin creatures with blue skin and extra arms. Xanthari diplomats. Behind them stood a group of crystalline beings that seemed to glow with internal light. Vorthak representatives. The lead Xanthari stepped forward as the human team exited their transport. It spoke with the same musical quality as the ship's. Computer. Welcome, human delegation. I am High Coordinator Vexthul of the Galactic Sports Federation. We are honored by your participation in the Convergence Games. Jake stepped forward and offered a slight bow. Thank you for the invitation. I am Captain Jake Morrison. This is my team. Vexthul looked at each human in turn. Its large eyes seemed to study them with scientific interest. Fascinating. Your species maintains warrior traditions despite your technological advancement. Most civilizations abandon such practices as they evolve. We find them useful, Jake replied carefully. Of course. Primitive cultures often cling to ancient ways. We understand. Vexthul made a sound that might have been laughter. Your military backgrounds will make for entertaining competition. The audience loves variety. Jake felt Ryan tense beside him. The alien had just called them primitive and entertaining in the same breath. But Jake kept his expression neutral. We look forward to the competition, he said. Vexthul gestured for them to follow. Come, we will show you to your quarters and provide orientation materials. The tournament begins in 2 days. You will need time to understand the rules. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The ceilings stretched up beyond sight. Gravity seemed to work differently in different areas. Beings of every imaginable shape and size moved through the space with practiced ease. Captain Morrison, Vexthul said as they walked. Might I ask about your team selection process? Most species send their finest athletes, professional competitors, who train specifically for these events. We sent our finest fighters, Jake replied. Fighters, yes, but these are sporting competitions, entertainment. Surely you understand the difference? Jake looked at his team. Maya had killed enemy soldiers with her bare hands. Alex had survived 3 different wars. Ryan had led special operations missions behind enemy lines. Katie had coordinated battles that saved thousands of lives. Danny had spent years in hostile territory gathering intelligence. We understand the difference, Jake said finally. But as they continued through the station, Jake began to realize that maybe they didn't. Maybe the aliens didn't either. What looked like sport to them looked like warfare to humans. What they called entertainment, humans called survival. The tournament was going to be interesting. Their quarters were luxurious by any standard. Each team member had a private room with amenities that seemed almost magical. But Jake noticed something else. Security cameras in every corner, monitoring devices built into the walls. They were guests, but they were also being watched. Captain, Katie said quietly as they gathered in the common area. I don't think they know what they've invited. Jake nodded. The aliens expected a show. They wanted to see how primitive humans handled their sophisticated games. They thought they were getting amateur athletes who played soldier. They were about to get professional soldiers who played for keeps. The arena was a perfect circle, 500 meters across with walls that stretched up into darkness. Thousands of alien spectators filled the stands, their voices creating a sound like rushing water. Jake Morrison stood with his team at the entrance, watching other competitors prepare for the first event. Combat simulation was supposed to be the easiest competition, a warm-up event according to High Coordinator Vexthul. Jake watched a team of Zenthari warriors move through their preparation ritual. They performed elaborate movements, spinning their weapons in complex patterns that looked more like dancing than fighting. They're putting on a show, Ryan Blake said quietly. Jake nodded. The Zenthari were skilled, no doubt about it. Their movements were precise and coordinated, but they moved like performers, not soldiers. Every gesture was designed to impress the audience. A team of crystalline Vorthak took the arena next. They manipulated energy fields with their minds, creating beautiful displays of light and power. The crowd cheered as colored beams danced through the air. It was impressive and completely useless in a real fight. Contestants from Earth, you are next, an alien official announced. Jake led his team onto the arena floor. The surface was made of some material that felt solid but responded to pressure like living tissue. Weapons racks lined the walls, filled with devices that hummed with energy. At the center of the arena stood a holographic display showing the mission parameters. Maya Johnson read the display aloud. Eliminate hostile targets. Protect civilian assets. Complete objectives within time limit. She looked at Jake. Standard combat scenario. For us, Alex Turner added. Playground rules for them. The scenario loaded around them. Suddenly they were standing in what looked like a war-torn city. Buildings rose on all sides, some damaged by explosions. Smoke drifted through the streets. In the distance, Jake could hear the sound of weapons fire. Targets approaching from multiple vectors, Katie Brooks said, studying her tactical display. 12 hostiles, 6 civilians, 3 objective points. Jake felt something shift inside him. The arena disappeared from his mind. This was no longer a game or a competition. This was a mission. His team responded the same way. Maya, take overwatch. Position on that building. Alex with me on point. Katie, coordinate fire support. Danny, sweep right flank. Ryan, you have tactical command. They moved without hesitation. Maya sprinted toward the nearest building, finding a route to the roof that would give her a clear field of fire. Alex fell in beside Jake, weapon ready, eyes scanning for threats. The team flowed into combat formation like water finding its level. In the stands, the crowd grew quiet. This was not what they expected to see. The first hostile targets appeared from behind a wrecked vehicle. Most competitors would have engaged them directly, turning the fight into a spectacle. Maya put them down with 2 precise shots before they knew humans were in the area. Targets neutralized, she reported. Moving to next position. Jake and Alex advanced down the main street, using cover and concealment like they had been taught. They moved from building to building, always keeping something solid between them and potential threats. When enemies appeared, they eliminated them quickly and efficiently. "This is boring," Jake heard someone in the crowd say. Boring. The humans were winning effortlessly, and the audience thought it was boring, because they weren't putting on a show. They weren't making it entertaining. Danny's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, I have eyes on civilian assets, 3 non-combatants in the building to your left. Appears to be a family group." "Protect and extract," Jake ordered. Danny moved like a ghost through the simulated battlefield. He reached the civilians without being detected by enemy forces, guided them to safety, and rejoined the team before most competitors would have even located the targets. "Objective 1 complete," Katie announced. Moving to Phase 2. The scenario shifted. Now they were in an industrial complex with multiple levels and hidden passages. More enemies, better weapons, harder targets. Jake watched other teams struggle with the complexity. The Zenthari were still performing their elaborate combat dances. The Vorthak were creating impressive light shows that accomplished nothing. The humans treated it like a real mission. "Building cleared," Alex reported after systematically searching a factory complex. 4 hostiles down, 1 civilian rescued, valuable intelligence recovered. They moved through the scenario like professionals, doing their job. No wasted motion, no unnecessary risks, no showboating for the crowd. When enemies appeared, they were eliminated. When objectives needed to be completed, they were completed. When civilians needed protection, they were protected. The audience was getting restless. This wasn't what they came to see. In 23 minutes, the human team completed all objectives with 0 casualties and perfect efficiency. Other teams were still working on the first phase of the scenario. High Coordinator Vexthul appeared on the arena floor as the simulation ended. The tall alien looked confused and slightly annoyed. "Human team, your performance was adequate. However, this is a sporting competition. Entertainment for our audience. Your approach lacks artistic merit." Jake looked at the alien official. "We completed the mission." "Yes, but competitions are judged on style as well as results. Flair, creativity. The crowd wants to see impressive displays of skill, not efficient elimination of targets." "Efficient elimination of targets is an impressive display of skill," Ryan said. Vexthul made that musical sound again. "Perhaps in primitive warrior cultures. Here, we appreciate the art of combat, the beauty of the fight itself." Jake understood now. The aliens had turned warfare into performance art. They cared more about looking good than winning. It was like judging soldiers based on how well they marched instead of how well they fought. "We'll keep that in mind," Jake said. But he had no intention of changing anything. His team had trained to stay alive and complete missions. If the aliens wanted a show, they could watch someone else. The next event was tactical warfare, scheduled for the following day. As they left the arena, Jake could hear the crowd discussing their performance. Some seemed impressed by the efficiency. Others called it boring. A few suggested that humans didn't understand the spirit of the competition. "Captain," Maya said as they walked back to their quarters, "did you hear what they were saying about us?" "I heard. They think we're missing the point." Jake stopped walking and looked at his team. Maya with her steady hands and sharp eyes. Alex with his scars and quiet competence. Ryan with his tactical mind and leadership experience. Katie with her ability to coordinate chaos into order. Danny with his talent for being invisible when necessary. "We're not missing the point," he said. "We just have a different point." The aliens thought competition was about entertainment. Humans thought it was about survival. The aliens performed warfare. Humans practiced it. Tomorrow they would find out which approach worked better. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the crowd's reaction. They had been disappointed by the human performance, not because it was bad, but because it wasn't entertaining enough. He walked to the window of his quarters and looked out at the space station. Millions of beings lived and worked here, all focused on this tournament, all treating warfare like a game. Jake had spent his entire adult life learning how to fight and survive. His team had done the same. They had trained in real combat, lost friends to enemy fire, made decisions where mistakes meant death. The aliens had turned all of that into a show. Tomorrow would be different, Jake decided. Tomorrow the aliens would see what human tactical warfare really looked like, and maybe they would understand why humans didn't treat war like entertainment. Maybe they would understand why that was important. Jake Morrison woke to the sound of his door chime at 0500 hours. He opened it to find Dr. Amy Rodriguez standing in the corridor, her face pale and worried. "We need to talk," she said. "All of us. Now." 20 minutes later, the entire human team sat in their common room. Amy had her datapad connected to the wall display showing intercepted alien communications. Her hands shook slightly as she worked. "I've been monitoring alien data channels since we arrived," Amy said. "Most of it is routine tournament information. Results, schedules, audience ratings. But last night something changed." She brought up a series of messages written in alien text with translations appearing below. Jake read them with growing concern. "Military assessment protocols activated," he read aloud. "Combat efficiency analysis required. Threat evaluation necessary." "It gets worse," Amy said, switching to another set of messages. "These are from something called the Zenthari Strategic Command. They're asking questions about human military capabilities." Ryan Blake leaned forward. "What kind of questions?" "Everything. Population size, industrial capacity, weapons technology, fleet strength." Amy's voice was tight. "Jake, they're not treating this as a sporting event anymore." Katie Brooks was studying her own datapad. "I've been tracking the other competitors. Most teams are performing exactly like they did yesterday. Same tactics, same approaches. But 3 species have completely changed their strategies." She showed footage from the previous day's tactical warfare event. The Ketmar had dominated using their hive mind coordination, but now they moved differently, more aggressively, more like soldiers preparing for real combat. "They're studying us." "Alex," Turner said. "No," Amy replied. "They're studying what we represent. Look at this." She displayed a communication between alien military observers. The translation made Jake's blood run cold. "Human combat doctrine indicates advanced warrior culture. Efficiency levels suggest actual battlefield experience. Recommend immediate, strategic reassessment of species threat level." "Threat level?" Maya Johnson asked. Amy nodded. "Jake, I don't think this tournament is what we were told it was." Danny Kim had been quiet during the briefing, but now he spoke up. "I've been doing some reconnaissance around the station. There are a lot more military personnel here than there should be for a sporting event." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Zenthari Strategic Command has a full observation team. Forthak Military Intelligence has analysts studying every human movement. The Ketmar have brought what looks like their entire war planning staff." Danny paused. "This isn't entertainment. It's evaluation." The room fell silent as the implication sank in. The tournament wasn't just a sporting competition. It was a way for galactic civilizations to assess each other's military capabilities, and humanity had just demonstrated that they were very good at warfare. "So what do we do?" Katie asked. Before Jake could answer, their door chimed again. High Coordinator Vexthul stood in the corridor, but he wasn't alone. Behind him were 6 Zenthari warriors in full combat gear. "Captain Morrison," Vexthul said, his musical voice somehow different, more serious. "We need to discuss your team's performance." Jake invited them in, though the armed escort made it clear this wasn't really a request. Vexthul sat down while his guards remained standing. "Your species has surprised us," the alien said. "We expected primitive warriors playing at civilized combat. Instead, we have observed professional soldiers conducting military operations." "We told you we were sending fighters," Jake replied. "Yes, but we assumed you meant athletes who fight, not soldiers who kill." Vexthul leaned forward. Captain, in yesterday's tactical warfare event, your team eliminated 47 hostile targets in 31 minutes. The previous record was 12 targets in 2 hours. Jake said nothing. More concerning, Vexthul continued, your tactics are unknown to us. Your coordination, your efficiency, your absolute ruthlessness in completing objectives. These are not sporting techniques. What exactly are you saying? Ryan asked. I am saying that your species has turned warfare into an art form, and that makes you dangerous. The words hung in the air like a threat. Jake realized they had walked into something much larger than a tournament. The galaxy's civilizations use these games to measure each other, to understand who could be trusted and who needed to be watched. Humanity had just announced that they were very good at war. There's something else, Vexthul said. Today's survival challenge has been modified. Other species have requested increased difficulty levels. They want to see how humans perform under extreme conditions. How extreme? Amy asked. Potentially lethal. Jake felt his team tense around him. This was no longer about sports or entertainment. The aliens wanted to test human limits. They wanted to know what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. And if we refused to participate? Jake asked. That would be interpreted as admission of weakness, or deception about your capabilities. Vexthul stood up. Captain, your species has claimed membership in the Galactic community. These games determine your place in that community. Your performance so far suggests humans belong among the warrior races. After the aliens left, Jake gathered his team for planning. The survival challenge would take place in an artificial environment that could simulate any planetary conditions. Previous challenges had involved finding resources, avoiding dangers, and completing objectives while dealing with hostile environments. They're going to try to kill us, Maya said bluntly. Maybe, Jake agreed, but we've been in worse situations. Have we? Katie asked. Jake, we're not just representing ourselves anymore. We're representing all of humanity. If we fail, the galaxy learns we're weak. If we succeed too well, they learn we're dangerous. It was an impossible situation. Perform poorly and humanity would be seen as primitive and weak. Perform too well and they would be seen as a threat. Either way, Earth's relationship with the galaxy would be defined by what happened in the next few days. So we do what we always do, Ryan said. We complete the mission and come home alive. The survival challenge arena was a massive dome that could recreate any environment in the galaxy. When the human team entered, they found themselves in what looked like a jungle world. High temperature, thick humidity, dangerous plants and animals. But Jake suspected the real dangers would be the other competitors. The rules were simple. Teams were scattered across the environment with minimal equipment. They had to survive for 72 hours while completing a series of objectives. The twist was that teams could interact with each other. Alliance or conflict was allowed. Contact. Danny reported from his scouting position. Ketmar team, 2 kilometers south. They're moving in formation toward our position. Hostile intent? Jake asked. Unknown, but they're armed and organized. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of avoiding contact like most teams would, he decided to engage. Not to eliminate the Ketmar, but to demonstrate human tactical thinking. We make contact on our terms, he told his team. Show them what human soldiers do when diplomacy fails. 20 minutes later, the human team had the Ketmar surrounded without firing a shot. The insect-like aliens found themselves facing weapons from 6 different directions, with no clear escape route. Ketmar team, Jake called out. We propose an alliance. The negotiation that followed was broadcast to the entire tournament audience. 2 species with completely different approaches to warfare finding common ground through mutual respect for professional competence. But in the observation decks, alien military leaders were taking notes. They watched humans demonstrate tactical flexibility, strategic thinking, and the ability to turn enemies into allies through superior positioning. The galaxy was learning that humans didn't just fight well. They thought about fighting in ways no other species had considered, and that scared them more than anything else. The Grand Melee Arena was the largest space Jake Morrison had ever seen. 10 kilometers across with multiple levels, environmental zones, and obstacles that defied physics. 200 competitors from 47 species stood at starting positions, around the perimeter. Only one team would remain standing at the end. Jake looked at his 5 teammates. Maya Johnson checked her weapon one final time. Alex Turner rolled his shoulders, loosening muscles that had carried him through 3 wars. Ryan Blake studied the tactical display with the calm focus of a man who had led soldiers into impossible situations. Katie Brooks monitored communication channels, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. Danny Kim seemed to disappear even while standing right beside them, a talent that had kept him alive in hostile territory. 6 humans against 194 aliens. The odds should have been overwhelming. Ladies and beings of the galaxy, High Coordinator Vexthul announced to the massive audience, the grand melee begins now. The arena exploded into chaos. Energy beams cut through the air. Explosions shook the ground. Teams scattered in every direction, some seeking cover, others charging straight into combat. The Zenthari moved in perfect formation, their weapons, creating geometric patterns of destruction. The Vorthak generated shields of crystallized light. The Ketmar spread out like a living network, each individual connected to the hive mind. The humans did something different. They disappeared. Phase 1. Jake said quietly into his comm. Tactical withdrawal to position 7. They moved through, the chaos like ghosts. While other teams engaged in spectacular battles for the entertainment of the crowd, the humans used smoke, debris, and confusion to reach a defensive position in the arena's industrial section. Within 10 minutes, they had vanished from all tracking systems. Where did they go? Jake heard an alien commentator ask. The answer came 20 minutes later when the first alien team was eliminated not by the humans they could see, but by the humans they couldn't. Danny Kim had spent the first phase of the battle doing what he did best, moving unseen through enemy territory, gathering intelligence, marking targets. When the Deep-Sworn Aquatic team thought they were safe in their water-filled combat zone, Danny was already there. Deep-Sworn team eliminated, the arena announcer said. Cause unknown. Jake smiled. Let the other species wonder how 6 humans had removed 12 opponents without being detected. The battle continued for hours. Teams fought and fell in spectacular displays that had the audience cheering. The Zenthari eliminated 3 teams in a single coordinated assault. The Vorthak created a light show that blinded half the remaining competitors. The Ketmar used their hive mind to predict and counter every attack, but the humans kept disappearing teams. Quietly, efficiently, without fanfare. This is not entertaining, Vexthul said privately to his military advisors. The humans are making this tournament boring. No, replied a Zenthari general. They are making it terrifying. By the 6-hour mark, only 50 competitors remained. The arena had been reduced to ruins by the constant fighting. The crowd was on its feet, cheering for their favorite teams. But in the military observation decks, alien commanders watched, in growing concern as the humans continued to eliminate opponents without being seen. Phase 2, Jake announced. Active engagement. The humans emerged from concealment like a storm. Maya took overwatch position on a damaged tower, her rifle picking off targets with mechanical precision. Alex and Jake moved through the ruins, like sharks through water, appearing where enemies least expected them. Ryan coordinated the assault with the calm voice of a man who had done this 1,000 times before. Katie managed communications and tactical support while keeping track of every moving piece on the battlefield. Danny continued his invisible war, striking from shadows and vanishing before anyone could respond. The audience fell silent as they watched 6 humans systematically dismantle teams that had dominated galactic warfare competitions for centuries. The Zenthari champion squad moved to engage them directly. 12 of the galaxy's finest warriors, trained from birth in the art of combat, armed with the best weapons their civilization could produce. They advanced in perfect formation, their movements coordinated like a ballet of destruction. The humans shredded them in 90 seconds. Maya's covering fire pinned half the Zenthari behind inadequate cover. Alex and Jake hit them from 2 directions, simultaneously, using tactics the aliens had never encountered. Ryan directed the attack with surgical precision while Katie coordinated fire support. Danny appeared behind enemy lines and eliminated their commander before they knew he was there. When the smoke cleared, 12 Xanthari warriors lay unconscious on the arena floor. 6 humans stood over them, barely breathing hard. The arena was completely silent. 50 million spectators stared in shock at what they had just witnessed. The galaxy's premier warrior race had been defeated by a species most of them had never heard of 6 months ago. Xanthari team eliminated, the announcer said weakly. The remaining teams began to surrender. One by one, competitors who had trained their entire lives for this moment laid down their weapons and walked away. They had seen enough. The humans weren't just winning. They were demonstrating a level of combat effectiveness that made continued resistance pointless. When the last alien team surrendered, Jake and his teammates stood alone in the center of the ruined arena. 6 humans who had never intended to compete in a galactic tournament had just won the greatest military competition in known space. High Coordinator Vex Thule appeared on the arena floor, but he was no longer alone. Behind him walked representatives from every major galactic civilization, military commanders, political leaders, intelligence officials. They approached the humans with expressions that mixed awe, fear, and respect. "Captain Morrison," Vex Thule said, his musical voice subdued, "your species has won the Convergence Games. You have demonstrated combat capabilities that exceed our previous understanding of warfare effectiveness." Jake looked around at the alien leaders. He could see the calculations in their eyes. Humanity had just announced itself as the galaxy's dominant military power. Every civilization would now have to factor human capabilities into their strategic planning. "We came here to compete in sporting events," Jake said. "We had no idea this was a military evaluation." "Perhaps," Vex Thule replied. "That is what makes your performance so concerning. You achieved this level of dominance without even trying." Ambassador Lisa Carter arrived from Earth the next day to handle the political aftermath. She found Jake and his team in their quarters quietly packing their equipment. The tournament was over, but the real consequences were just beginning. "The galaxy wants to know what humanity's intentions are," Lisa told them. "Every major civilization is requesting formal meetings. Some want military alliances, others want non-aggression pacts. A few are talking about preemptive defensive measures." Jake looked out at the space station that had hosted the tournament. Ships from dozens of worlds were already departing, carrying news of humanity's victory back to their home systems. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. "What do we tell them?" Lisa asked. Jake thought about the question. His team had come here to compete in games. They had ended up demonstrating that humanity was the most dangerous species in known space. Not because they wanted to be, but because they had never learned to treat warfare as entertainment. "Tell them the truth," he said finally. "We didn't come here to conquer anyone. We came here to play their games. The fact that we won isn't a threat. It's just what happens when you invite warriors to a war and expect them to lose." Lisa nodded. "And if they ask about humanity's military capabilities?" Jake smiled. "Tell them what they already know. We don't play war. We perfect it." The transport ship that carried them home was the same one that had brought them to the tournament. But everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the new species asking for acceptance. In the galactic community, they were the species everyone else had to plan around. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Jake realized they had given the galaxy exactly what it asked for. They had shown alien civilizations what human warriors could do. The galaxy had learned that humans were dangerous. Now everyone would have to decide what to do about it.